ASMR you sitting comfortably. Thank you to everybody who watched my last video, which was a map drawing video of Wales, where I'm from, and where I was staying. And this week's video is not of Wales, because I'm not in Wales. This week I'm in Scotland, so I thought I'd do a map drawing video of Scotland. I'm in south-east Scotland, near a town called Dunbar, staying at a farm in a place called Spot, and I am going to draw a map of Scotland for you. I confess that I started this video about an hour ago, only to find that my camera had broken. So this is my second stab at the video. Frustratingly, I think I did a very good job the last time round, and inevitably I won't do as good a job this time. Yeah, thanks to everyone who watched my last video. As I say, if there's a country you'd like me to draw, please do mention it in the comments, and I'll get round to it as soon as I'm home. Okay, so we're going to start up here with our map of Scotland, in the north-west point and the north-east point. So Scotland is quite a hard country to draw because it's so craggy, but I'm going to give it my best shot here. It's a very beautiful country, both to look at as a map, I think, and also to be in. Where I'm staying is right in the south, quite near the border with England, very near Edinburgh. And yeah, it's very beautiful here, right near the sea, right near a place called Bass Rock, which is an old volcanic plug. That's the bit of the volcano right at the bottom of the mountain bit, right at the bottom of the cone. That is a plug of magma that I think is formed when the volcano dies. So it's a huge mound that comes out of the ground, and it's very impressive. Quite steep to climb. We went up it yesterday, actually, me and my partner and her family, which is why I'm here. We're visiting family, and it was very pretty at the top, because you could see 360 all the way around, kind of like a mountain. So I made my first mistake there. So this point is about here. I think we'll go down from this point towards it, rather than what I did last time, which caused a mistake, which was go from the other way. Yeah, it was nice to get some good feedback from my last video. Thank you to everyone who watched. I find these videos, well, mostly relaxing to make. Apart from when I have technical issues. I was just checking then to make sure the camera was running. Yes, I'm still playing around with things, but I'm getting closer to a format that suits me. So yeah, thanks for watching. This map is going to be a bit like my Wales map, in that it's not going to be hugely detailed. It's going to have the main stuff on it, and I'm going to make it a little more detailed than my Welsh map, because I had to cut that short because of problem with not having enough memory. But this time I should have enough memory. Right now we're coming along across the most easterly point, a place called Fraserburgh, on the west coast. I presume that's how you pronounce it, like Edinburgh, even though it's spelt Berg, B-U-R-G-H. My apologies to any Scottish people watching this video for my pronunciation. As I say, I'm Welsh, English speaking Welsh, and I don't have any Scottish ancestry that I know of, so yeah, smaller than Edinburgh and Glasgow, certainly smaller than Glasgow. Yeah, so we've come around here, we're just coming into Dundee, which is about sort of just lower than midway up the east coast of Scotland. And we have a sort of lots of these kind of, because of how craggy it is, you have lots of these like broken bits of land with rivers going through, which I will do my best to draw and to label, but there's so many of them, they're quite difficult to get, particularly for an inexperienced map drawer like myself. So we're just passing Kirkcaldy. I did live in Glasgow for about a year. I was working in a theatre up here. Theatre called the Citizens Theatre in Glasgow, which I loved. I was working as an assistant director there, trainee director. It was actually my grandpa. When he was alive, he used to write plays. We're just passing Edinburgh here. He used to write plays, and he was quite a well-known playwright. And one of his plays was on at the theatre that I ended up working in, the Citizens Theatre in Glasgow. Let me see, yes, this looks about right here, so here we are. So we get down to here. I've been focusing so hard on getting it right that I've pushed really hard on the paper. You see how lovely and soft it is up there, and then it's suddenly big ugly black outline here. Okay, so now we're in the very south of Scotland, the border between England by Berwick-on-Tweed, which I think is Scotland, yeah, the very south of Scotland. And then this is the border here, famously defined by Hadrian's Wall. Hadrian was a famous Roman emperor, I believe, who built a wall between England and Scotland. So the coast comes in about in line with this, so we kind of know we're still on track here. So now let's go back up here to the top. We'll start to work down. Okay, now this coastline, Scotland's west coast, is very difficult to draw. In the previous video where I had a stab at it, before I realised that none of my equipment was on, I found it very difficult. So let's see if I can make a better job of it this time. I remember this bit I'm drawing now because it looks kind of like a mini Wales. When I was in Wales, we went to stay very briefly in Cardigan Bay, which for anyone who doesn't know where that is, that's the part of Wales that looks like it's had a bite taken out of it. The big, very west coast, the big curve that that makes Wales. It's beautiful there. We saw lots of dolphins. As one of the largest dolphin colonies in Europe. Apparently, we saw them. They were very playful, excited to see us. It looked like. And that was pretty amazing. You can see all of the coastline of Wales very easily from there. You wouldn't be able to do that in Scotland. One, because it's so craggy, like this. There's so many bits blocking other bits. But two, because it's a lot bigger than Wales geographically. Its also population is also bigger. This was the problem I was having before, is when I looked away from my reference map, I would lose where I was, because there's so many little bits of this coastline. They're so intricate, it's quite hard to find your place, particularly to draw to scale. So yeah, how are we doing there? we're okay. Could be better, but it could be worse. I think I'm not going to rub that out. Basically, this little sort of estuary here should line up with the very bottom of, or should be just below the bottom of this kind of estuary here that goes in up here. This up here is kind of looks almost like a big split in Scotland. It goes up like that. It's really cool to draw actually. All the way up to Fort William, which is up here, and then all the way down here. Yeah, I think people don't realise in the rest of the UK how amazingly impressive Scotland's coastline is in terms of its how unique it is and how wild it is. It's pretty impressive, I think. It's pretty scary, I always find it. So, we look like we're probably coming a bit too far south with all of this here. Come down to this peninsula here. The Brodick Castle, Sensory Park. Well, just here, I think. I can't remember. My map doesn't say what this peninsula here is called, but I think it has a name. So yeah, this is the really complicated bit now. Got lots of tributaries and estuaries and things like that. This goes around here, up like that. This bit I had to stop the video in last time because of how difficult it got. But yeah. Okay, I think that is pretty much. That's pretty good. Just up here is Loch Lomond, just down by here is Glasgow. So yeah, we're doing okay. It's not perfect at all, but that's alright. I just realised that I've been talking to the side the whole time for this video because of where my reference map is placed. You might see a shadow at the top of your screen now. That's because that's the shadow of the reference map in front of me. Yeah, so we've not done such a terrible job of this. Could have been better. Yeah, some really remote places in Scotland, in the UK, and by that I mean Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland and England. There's not a lot of remote places. It's quite a small island and incredibly populated for its size. Yeah, we're a very densely populated country in terms of the landmass. Sort of, around 70 million people living here. In the UK, comparatively to France, that has about the same population. It's about 5 times bigger, or something like that. Or it's a lot bigger anyway. So, we've got an outline of the main stretch of Scotland. It's looking good, I think. I'm pretty happy. Yeah, I'm just gonna. It's perhaps not as it's a little fatter than I would have liked, I think. But this is mostly what it looks like. I'm just gonna go and find some little bits to add islands to, because there's islands all the way up here. So I've got these 2 little cracks here, and just by here there is an island. While I've been staying here, I found a big box of maps, and I wanted to do some of them, to draw some of them, but I couldn't quite do it because I wanted to study the areas a little more before I did it, and also I would have had to use those maps as reference maps because there was so much detail in them I wanted to catch. But in order to do that, I would have needed to be able to put them up somewhere. It's a little complicated, and I'm just trying to do a quick video as I've got stuff to do here while I'm visiting people and etc. just to show in a video. I can do a sort of map tracing with my finger or with a chopstick or something like that. I quite like those videos when I see them. ASMR does them a lot. So yeah, this here is Skye, the Isle of Skye. All along here, lots of famous whiskey distilleries, places to get gin and stuff like that, places to brew gin. The whiskey is one of the most important exports to Scotland, I think. It's got a very important oil industry in the North Sea, and also a very important whiskey industry. And if you ever go to Scotland, if you visit one of the cities, say Glasgow or Edinburgh, Dundee, somewhere like that, you'll be sure to find an excellent whiskey bar. My favourite place in Glasgow to get a whiskey, it's a bit touristy I think actually, but I still enjoyed it, was the, well, because I suppose I sort of was a tourist even though I was there for a year, was the Ben Nevis, which is the name of the highest peak in Scotland. I will put that on here. There's a lot of very tall mountains in Scotland comparatively to England, which has none. And the tallest mountains in Scotland, I think, have to be over. Maybe I can't remember how many feet they have to be over. Like 10,000, something like that. Those are called Munros. Yeah, and they're pretty tall mountains, taller than anything really in England and Wales. Wales has Snowdon, which is fairly tall. I think it is probably about as big as a Munro, but it's not as big as the biggest ones in Scotland, such as Ben Nevis. So I'm going to do some labelling on this map. I'm also going to colour it in. It's looking quite good, this, I think. So, yeah, as I say, these islands are really hard to draw. I'm sorry as well if there's some creaking in the background of this video. The chair that I'm using is a little creaky. I'm a fidgeter. I'm also sorry if I'm repeating myself. I can't remember what I said in the first video, which I had to redo, and this video. Having to intermittently check that my equipment is working, that everything is being recorded, because I would sure hate it if I lost this after having started again already. Yeah. Right, so yeah, I'm going to have to look at my reference map when I'm labelling some of these places, because I know a lot of places in Scotland, but this coastline is so much more complicated than I remembered it being, that I think I'm sure to get things wrong if I don't have a map with me. Yeah, I can see some places aren't labelled on here, such as Isla, places like that, so I might even have to get another map out to show you all of the places around. So here we go, those are the islands nearest to Scotland. These are all Scottish islands, I believe. Yeah, they're very cold around here, I imagine. Nearly up, well, it's still a way up to get to Iceland, but, not far. Heading up to Lewis, which is one of the northernest points of Ireland. There's Lewis and Harris. Actually, where I'm from, in Cardiff, used to be owned, the area used to be owned by a guy called Lord Mackintosh. I don't know, I can't remember his first name, but Alfred or something like that. But he was a very rich Scottish nobleman, and he named all the streets around me and named after his children and family members, Scots. So we've got streets like Angus Street, Inverness Place, stuff like that. Yeah, I loved my time in Glasgow, and I'd move back there if I could. There are reasons why I can't, personal circumstances and things like that. hope at some point in my life I will get a chance to move back to Scotland. Much like Wales, the people in Scotland are very friendly. I mean, I think people probably everywhere in the world are a bit more friendly than they are in London. No, that's probably unfair. There are a lot of friendly people in London, but there's something about the city that makes people a little meaner than they need to be sometimes. So, you can go visit Scotland, of course, once this pandemic is over, and you can visit the Highlands and Islands, beautiful places around there, remote places, remote regions. And this is looking pretty good now. Now, Orkney is over. It's up here, actually. I think it's a way away from Scotland. So what we're going to do is draw it out by here, and then I'll put a box around it so we know that that's not its position. That's just a picture of it, so we know what it looks like. It's very small. You can get ferries out to these islands. Socially distanced ferries at the moment. I think for a while no one could get on or off the islands unless they really needed to. I'm being a bit fast and loose with this drawing of Orkney. My reference map is tiny, so it's quite a small place. I think there's a place in the middle here, then, and then, yeah, there were so many maps to choose from in this house to draw Scotland from, but most of them were really huge, and I didn't have a way of sticking one up. I'm sorry, Orkney, to the population of Orkney, this really isn't what Orkney looks like very much, so you have to use your imagination. Yeah, in a second I'll get a ruler and just draw a box around that. But yeah, so yeah, there were so many maps to choose from, but I didn't know which one to choose. But it was quite difficult because they're quite big, and I couldn't really hang them anywhere to use as a reference map, and it would have been hard to look at them and look down at the paper. There's too much. I thought about trying to memorise the map, but it's too much for me to memorise, I think. So I couldn't really do it. Yeah, but I'm pretty happy with that for the time being. Okay, so we'll just draw a little box around Orkney here. So I've been playing with some different things voice-wise in these videos. I tried in the last video to do some more softly spoken stuff. I had a couple of comments from people saying they preferred whispering, and I always prefer whispering in videos. I actually also find it quite difficult to maintain a softly spoken voice for that long. That really is an awful box I've drawn there. I really find it hard to maintain softly spoken voice for that long. It's quite hard to suddenly start talking at normal volume. So whisper is a little easier to maintain. So down here this is Orkney, and this is Shetland. They're remote islands up here, part of the UK and part of Scotland, but with their very own distinct culture. Lots of prehistoric culture there too, very interestingly. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything I want to put into the outline of this. I'm just going to take a pause, and when I come back, we're going to try and colour this in. I know it's going to be difficult because of all this. I'm going to use pastels again. It's going to be really hard to get it as fine as I might like, but hopefully I'll get there, and it'll look very pretty when I'm done. Okay, so I took a little break there. Get myself a sip of water and just get my pastels out. And now I'm going to colour this map in. We're going to use green again, as with the other map I did. I often see people doing much more adventurous colours on maps, but I sometimes think you can't go wrong with tried and tested formula. Nice green edges. nice blue water. Now, where this map is going to differ from the Wales map is I'm not going to draw mountain ranges in so much. I'm actually going to, I'm not going to draw them in so much. I am going to focus more on some of the places in here. And part of the reason for that is that the upper regions of Scotland are so mountainous that it's actually quite difficult for me to represent the contours, the different heights of the mountains, different characteristics of the mountains in this map of this size with the stuff that I have and the reference map that I have. Yeah, it's a little easier in Wales. There's only several large ranges of mountains. They're quite distinct from the rest of the land in a way that they're not quite in Scotland. Now you'll see I'm being a bit fast and loose with lines here. Also because I'm wary of this video taking all night long. Yeah. Unfortunately, I forgot in Wales, I forgot to bring my pens with me, my black outliners. I wanted to use those to go around the edge once I've shaded, because then I can give it a much firmer edge. I mean, a child can colour inside the lines, but I seem to find it difficult. I'm not so bad at drawing the outlines to maps, but colouring in the lines I find difficult. So lots of Scotland's biggest towns, cities are on the east coast. Although I think Scotland is not unique, but most cities, most countries have their most populous city as the capital. I think that's often in part because when a city is made the capital, it becomes more populous often. That's certainly the case with somewhere like Cardiff, although Cardiff was the most populous place, I think. It wasn't as much as it is now, and that's partly down to it being named the capital, thus the civic centre of the country, as it were, the political centre of the country. In Scotland, I think Glasgow is a bigger city than Edinburgh. It sprawls a long way, and it's big. It feels big when you're there, actually. But Edinburgh is in fact the capital. I love Glasgow and I love its architecture, but I think if you were a tourist looking for the sort of most picturesque version of Scotland you could find, you'd probably go to Edinburgh. I love Edinburgh as well. I mean, as someone who works in theatre, it's obviously a hugely important city. I say obviously, but not that obvious. The reason why it's important is in normal years, that's years without a global pandemic, it's the host of, I think, the world's biggest arts festival of its kind, or one of the world's biggest, certainly. It takes place over a month, and pretty much every building that could be turned into a venue in Edinburgh is turned into a venue. It's a comedy festival primarily. The Fringe Festival, it's called Edinburgh Fringe, and this is a festival that's on the fringe of the International Festival, which takes place at the same time. The International Festival is an older festival that has some of the best global work in both music, opera, the theatre, and then the Fringe Festival are the sort of, I suppose, arts that in themselves would call themselves more fringe arts, comedy, stand-up comedy, sketch comedy, smaller new writing theatre. So the city is, when that's on, a hugely vibrant, jostling place. Not that it isn't the rest of the time, but Edinburgh is, I think, when I've been there out of festival season, it's a little sleepier. It's a beautiful place. There are loads of amazing places within it. Loads loads of interesting places like Leith, and it's an amazing university, so lots of young people around as well. But it's not as vibrant as it is when the Fringe is on. Although I tell you, after 3 weeks of 4 weeks of the Fringe, you really miss your bed and a quieter life. So I'm not doing such a terrible job of this. I originally feared that this coastline would be too difficult for me to do past on, and I certainly would have liked to been able to go around the edges with black pen, which I might try to do, but I don't really have my pens with me, so I can't do it in the way that I'd like. Oh, that wasn't so good there. Look, I went all outside there. Yeah, so I'm just softly colouring this in. So Scotland, like Wales, is politically devolved from the rest of the UK, which means it has its own ability to legislate for its people on certain issues such as healthcare, education. Not all areas are devolved, but yes, some are. Scotland is more devolved, I believe, than Wales. It has a larger form of devolution. And of course, Scotland has had a significant campaign recently to make the country independent entirely from the UK, which is very interesting for a number of reasons. The vote that took place several years ago, which was before the UK's exit from the European Union, in that vote Scotland voted narrowly to remain in the UK, but the country has shifted politically since that, with the vote to leave the EU that's happened, that was primarily voted for in England and also in parts of Wales. Scotland was overwhelmingly a Remain country, wanted to remain in the European Union. So the issue of independence, Scottish independence, has come back on the table in recent months, recent years, I guess, with everything that's been going on in these mad political times. Thinking about America and in the UK and in Europe, particularly with COVID-19, it's hard to keep track of what happened when. But it's quite bizarre to think that 10 years ago, none of these votes had happened. So there we go. This is South Scotland here. Here's Carlisle, somewhere by here. It's one of the northernmost English towns. So Scotland has its own distinct history from England. The two countries have been at war for a long time, through Edward I and the War of the Roses, Plantagenet kings of England, and there have been rulers of England and Wales, rulers of kings that have governed all three countries at the same time. When Oliver Cromwell came into power, when he took power during the English Civil War, I believe, if my history is correct, he brought forward the Act of Union, which brought the countries together in what we now call the United Kingdom. And in this kingdom, only one language was to be spoken, and that was English. And that's why now there's such a widespread, why English is so widespread in England, and I suppose to an extent across the world, because then when we colonised the rest of the world, we forced our language upon them also. I say I am Welsh, as I say, but a lot of English family in part of Britain. But there is in Scotland and Wales attempts to bring back the languages of those countries. So Scotland's other languages are Gaelic and also Scots, which is English. The modern English that we speak has parts of, there's almost a amalgamation of older English and Scots. So it's you might recognise some of it if you heard it. You can look it up. If you've ever heard of Train Spotting, that's a book written in Scots. I worked on a theatre version of that, which came before the film, in fact. But we restaged that recently at the Citizens Theatre. It was really interesting because it was all in Scots. Some of it I just didn't understand, but most of it you can understand just about, particularly when it's spoken, less so when it's written. Okay, so we've got our green all around the edge now, so now it's time for some blue. Let's see if I can make a better job with the blue than I did with the green. I doubt it somehow, but maybe I can. There we go. Yeah, I like that. Now, I actually just made the same mistake I made on my other video, my Wales video here, where I very stupidly did the far side before the right side before the left side of the paper, and therefore whenever I brought my hand across, it smudged all the chalk, all the pastel across the page, which was really frustrating. Look, that's not very good then. Oh well. I'm losing some of the definition when I do this. Maybe I should have just left it. But that does make it stand out really well. I think what I'll do is I'll do this in and then try and go around the edge with something, just to make it the coastline a little clearer. I'm not going to do all the islands and everything around the edge of all the islands, just the coastline. Just make that stand out. I love the colour of this blue, this deep dark blue. Yeah, it does look nice doing this. It's just incredibly hard to do it precisely. Spend so much time drawing the fiddly coastline and then ruin it all by chalking over it. I'm planning. I want to do a map of these Shetland Islands up here, Shetland or Orkney Islands. A detailed map of them, looking at some of the Neolithic sites. That would be quite cool, I think. I'm having to concentrate so hard with this section that I'm most certainly going to edit most of it out because I'm not doing any talking. Perhaps this is something that's relaxing in itself, just me pasteling in these lines. So yes, another thing I didn't do very well this time is I didn't blow off the green chalk before I started this blue bit, so some of my sea is looking a bit green, but that's okay. Again, none of this is to be really exact. It's just meant as a nice, relaxing video. Seen lots of ASMR people get some pretty irate comments for their map drawing videos for getting the names of places wrong, etc. And that stuff is important, but lots of these videos it's very hard to do the level of research you need to get every place right. Largely for certainly at my level, for no money. Hello. So I just took a short break then, and in that time I finished the shading around the edge. I did a little shading of the islands there, and I also drew a black outline for some of this border here, just to make it nice and clear, get some of the definition back, and I'm pretty happy with it. I think it looks quite nice. As I say, it's not as exact as it could be, but I think it's a good go. So I've got about 10% left on my battery for my camera. I could just charge it, but I'm hoping I can get it all done in that time. So I thought I'd just add to here, just so we know what this is. A border to England, which comes right the way up here. And the reason I've done that in red is because red and white are the colours of England. Blue is in fact the colour of Scotland. The English border then goes down along here, which I'll quickly just draw in. This is not that hard. Something like that. I'll just outline that with a pen as well. That's a very approximate. I'm not using a reference map for that, so that's just what I know it to do. Just get a little red there, just so people know that's England, and we'll just drag that in. Okay, so there is our map of Scotland. Now we're going to label some places. We'll start here with the capital, just about here. That's Edinburgh. Okay, so I'm going to draw these first, and then as the chalk dries, I'll come back, outline them, and label them. Right, and then if we're doing Edinburgh, we should do Glasgow, just about here. Then we'll move up to Perth, which is about here. Obviously there is a Perth in Australia as well. I imagine it's quite a bit hotter than the Perth in Scotland. Okay, so Glasgow, Edinburgh, Perth, Dundee by here. Up here we've got Aberdeen, which I always want to say in a Scottish accent. Aberdeen. And then as we go further west, at the very top we've got Inverness. Inverness was right next to Loch Ness, which is of course where the famous monster lives. Down here we've got Fort William. And then as we come here we've got Oban. And the last one we'll highlight is Dumfries, which is right look very clear right now, but I'm going to circle them so that we know them, and I'll label them as we go. So first, got Edinburgh there. Americans in particular are famous for not being able to pronounce English place names. And it's pronounced Edinburgh, not Edinburgh, although some people call it the Berg. There's a place in England, in northern England, called, I think it's northern England, called Loughborough. I think it's spelled Loughborough, something like that. But a famous American pronunciation of it is Luga Bruga. But it's actually pronounced Loughborough. Here we go to Dumfries. The very south. This, the most populous town in Scotland, city in Scotland is Glasgow. Edinburgh is the capital, so perhaps we will draw a little cross in it like this, so that we know that. Okay, then across this bay from Edinburgh is Perth. And Dundee. And then as we go further up, Aberdeen. Also got a very good university. I think it's gradually becoming quite a trendy place to live. Up here we've got Inverness, home of the Loch Ness Monster. And then over here we've got Fort William. I think it's very pretty around here. Oban here. I think you say it Oban. But maybe it's Oban, in which case I'm sorry. Yeah, and then I'm just going to put Orkney in up here. And Shetland up here. Okay, so those are the main cities in Scotland. Glasgow is the biggest, by quite a bit, I think, followed by Edinburgh, which is the capital. Edinburgh is quite an interesting city. It's a very old city. It's called the medieval old town. Very beautiful, but it wasn't fit for purpose for a long while, so they built the new town, which was a huge architectural project. And that new town is built as a grid system, but both places have famous cultural history. Glasgow and Edinburgh both have amazing universities. Glasgow has been good for sciences, as is Edinburgh, I think, and they're both good for arts. They're hugely important cities in the UK. Both had their fair share of poverty and hard times too, as well as affluence. Glasgow was one of the most important cities in the world during the Industrial Revolution, and towards the end of that time became a very famous group of artists called the Glasgow Boys, who were a sort of impressionist school of art in the late 19th, early 20th century. Okay, so whatever point's going to put on here for you. So up here we've got Skye, Canna, this here is Mull, probably further south than it actually is. Lewis up here. Harris up here. so just over here we have Scotland's tallest peak, Ben Nevis. I think it's about 1,300 metres. So just go, and we'll do a little arrow like that so we know it's taller than that. No, that means that's the wrong way around, isn't it? So we know that it's bigger than that. So, yeah, Ben Nevis, that's the tallest mountain. I think anything over 1,000 metres is Munro, maybe. Munro's are the tallest mountain in Scotland, all around the Highlands. Yeah, I mean, I could go on telling you places in Scotland for a long time. There's a lot of them, obviously. But yeah, I think what I'm going to do is draw a nice title for this map. Blue is the colour of Scotland, so I'll draw us a nice title, and then I think I'll leave it there. So we're going to do a big S. Just going to draw around it. So yeah, living in Scotland. Currently I'm about here. I don't live here anymore, but I hope to return. It's a great country. Yeah, it's obviously lots of people will know it. Lots more people, I imagine, in America know Scotland than they do know Wales. A lot of famous Americans are of Scottish descent. Your president, of course, Donald Trump, still owns a big swathe of land in Scotland where there's a lot of golf courses on this side of the country in particular, I think. Trump owns a big one, I think. Yeah, it's very famous for its whiskies, its Highland cows, its beef, its haggis, which I actually really like. You used to not be able to get haggis in America, I don't think, but you can now, I think. Anyway, it's kind of sausage made from offal and stuff. So if that's not your thing, then don't try it. Yeah, very cold in Scotland. Normally very wet, particularly in the east. On the west, I mean, where I am currently, which is in the east, it's a little drier actually. Some of the better weather in places like East Lothian. Yes, and the national anthem of Scotland is O Flower of Scotland, sung at all the sport matches. I think the national sport is football. Lots of great Scottish players. I'm an Arsenal fan, and we've got a player called Kieran Tierney who plays for us. He's great. But unfortunately the national team has fallen on hard times recently. It hasn't qualified in a long while for tournaments. And what else about Scotland? Yeah, they also play rugby, but they're not very good at that either. But they are very good. They've invented a lot of brilliant things of Scotland. A lot of brilliant bands, a lot of great writers and artists. And it's one of the most beautiful places in the United Kingdom. So thank you very much for listening to my map drawing video today, and watching my map drawing video. I hope it's been relaxing. If you did like it, then do give it a thumbs up, give me a subscribe, and please do tell people you know who like ASMR videos. I hope you're having a nice summer and that you're safe where you are. Lots of love. All the best.